What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today I wanted to give some thoughts on how I think DICE can avoid Hazard Zone ending up being Firestorm 2.0, as that is obviously a concern among many people in the community ever since the reveal of the mode. For those who don't know what I mean about Firestorm 2.0, Firestorm was the Battle Royale mode that they launched for Battlefield 5, and despite being a pretty decent BR experience in my opinion, the mode was literally dead within about 3 to 4 weeks of it launching, and I'm talking dead as in like I haven't been able to find a single game since probably a month after it launched. Before we get into it though, if you guys are new to the channel and you end up enjoying the video, then do consider subscribing and turning on those notifications so that you don't miss out on any upcoming 2042 content. But with that being said, let's get stuck right into it. So one of the most simple ways that I think DICE could avoid that happening with Hazard Zone, since obviously it's not going to be free to play and therefore it does have a high chance of just dying off pretty quickly, is that they 100% need to constantly update the mode, both in terms of content but also balancing and tuning. One thing that happened with Firestorm, which again was pretty much because it died off so early, and that was pretty much because it was behind a paywall, is that there really weren't any updates for the mode after it launched other than a few little tweaks here and there, but essentially in terms of content they pretty much just launched the mode and then never really touched it again afterwards. The great thing about Hazard Zone is that it will be launching with 7 maps, and so I think right off the bat they are adding some decent replayability to the mode that wasn't there with Firestorm, as that obviously only had the 1 map, but with that being said they will still need to update the mode after launch. Now in terms of content, I think they should be fine for the most part, simply because anything that gets added to All Out Warfare presumably will be added to Hazard Zone as well, so we're essentially already confirmed to be getting a couple of maps and 4 specialists and some weapons and all that good stuff, but I think actual patches and updates themselves are just as important. One thing that Warzone often suffered from was really overpowered weapons or bugs and glitches that kind of just ruined the game for weeks on end. Obviously with modes like these being so intense and where just one mistake can lead to the game ending, you cannot afford to have issues in these modes. If you die to a bug in regular multiplayer, then obviously that sucks, but you can just spawn back in and you're good to go. But if you die to a bug in Hazard Zone, that can essentially end the entire game and you just have to start all over at no fault of your own. So I do think that staying on top of those bugs and imbalances is absolutely pivotal to the success of the mode, as well as actual content updates too. Now moving on, something else that I think is super important in these kinds of games and game modes is the use of limited time modes. Now Hazard Zone, how it is now, sounds really fun and it sounds like it will be fun to play consistently, but if that's all we have, just literally one mode where it's 4-man squads and you enter the map to extract intel and then leave, it will likely get stale after only a couple of months. If DICE were to introduce some limited time modes every weekend or every other weekend, stuff like maybe Hazard Zone but with snipers only, or solo Hazard Zone lobbies, or like a 64 player lobby, or just some variant of the mode itself such as those, I think that would honestly go a long way in changing the pace of the mode and just giving us a nice new mode to play for a couple of days so that we don't get sick of the same thing on repeat. The good thing about limited time modes, so long as you do offer the regular mode at the same time still, is that they don't even need to be that different or even that good in the grand scheme of things. If you try a new mode and it just doesn't really seem to be received well by the community, simply change it up the next time or just remove that mode from the rotation, and even during the weekend that it's live, people might play 1 or 2 games, not really like it much, and then just go back to regular Hazard Zone. So there's really no risk at all to doing these limited time modes. A great example of what they could do, again referring back to Warzone, as that's just where I've experienced most of these kinds of modes, is that you could do modes that are much less intense and slow than the regular mode. So rather than the whole if you die you're out type of deal, everyone has say 5 lives in the game, so you can actually die 5 times before you lose, if that makes sense. Just kind of relieving a bit of the pressure from the game and making it a bit faster paced and chaotic, since people won't need to worry too much about dying. Variants of the main mode itself, such as those few that I just listed, are just a couple of examples of how they could keep things fresh and exciting and give us a quick break from the regular mode over the course of a weekend or even a whole week per month or something like that. And from my experience in other games, it tends to do really well, provided that you don't lock people out of the main mode, because some people will just want to play regular Hazard Zone still, but I think overall that is a really important aspect of keeping it fresh. Now the last thing that I wanted to touch on was giving us something to actually play and grind for. The way that they've currently explained it, I am slightly worried that there's not going to be too much of a reason to actually come back to the mode each and every week, because all we seem to be playing for are the dark market credits, which, as fun as it sounds, doesn't really sound like enough of a reason on its own for us to keep coming back. Obviously we haven't played the game yet, and so who knows, it could have plenty of reasons to keep us coming back, but I would definitely love to see some sort of like ranking or division system, or even, you know, certain skins for your specialists that you can only unlock after say 1,000 data drives extracted or something like that. Just something for me to sort of play for, rather than just loading into a game, playing it and then essentially achieving nothing outside of maybe having a good game here and there. If the gameplay loop is enjoyable enough and it has that sort of addictive feeling, then I don't think this necessarily needs to happen. For example, once again with Warzone, that game essentially has nothing to grind for, no ranked system or anything like that, but because the mode itself is fun enough, you sort of just keep coming back for more. So I don't think it's an absolute necessity or anything, but I do think that it really adds to the replayability of a game when there's actually a reason to keep coming back. With the way that the dark market credits work, I do think a division system would be really beneficial, essentially using SBMM to keep people of roughly the same skill levels together, because I have heard some concern in the community that if someone is just really good, then they have a ton of credits and just spend heaps of them before each round to get a heap of tactical upgrades, then that player is just going to dominate everyone and leave those more casual players feeling like they have no chance to win. The immediate way to fix that would just be a division system, so those who are new to the game and not as good as the top players would obviously be in like a bronze division, for example, and then that means that the players they're up against are all in relatively the same skill level and have relatively the same amount of credits to spend, just meaning that each game is a lot fairer. The other side of that though, aside from just being fair, is that it does also give you something to grind for in wanting to reach those higher divisions. If you're in the silver division, maybe you want to grind it out and get to the gold division in order to, you know, earn some bragging rights with your mates. Maybe you can earn a new skin or a player card element when you get to that division or something. Just anything along the lines of that would do a world of good for the replayability and longevity of the game, in my opinion, and so I do hope we see something like that eventually. Overall, I think the best way for DICE to avoid this being Firestorm 2.0 is to just simply make the mode free to play. I'm kind of shocked that they didn't do that, to be honest, but I do have a whole video on that topic from yesterday, so if you want to hear my thoughts on it, then feel free to check that one out. But yeah, if it never ends up being free to play, then these ideas are just some things that I think would help keep the game alive and not lead us to another Firestorm situation. If you guys have any other ideas, then definitely leave them down in the comments, as I'm sure you guys can think of some awesome ideas for Hazard Zone 2, and I'm keen to hear what you guys come up with. If you enjoyed the video, then be sure to leave a like down below, and if you are new, then consider subscribing to the channel with those notifications on. If you guys want to support the content that I make here on YouTube, then consider becoming a channel member. But with that being said, thank you all very much for watching. You guys have a great day, and I'll see you all out there on the battlefield.